Hey guys, welcome back. Ashley here, author, teacher, life coach. So today I want to read a story to you guys. To me it was hilarious, it was hysterical, and it was a correction that the Lord did on me. He used very creative correction to make his point. And if it would help any of you to be able to recognize this more in your own life, that is my motive for sharing this. If it could help you have more insight into your own life. Okay, and then I put out the points on the board and we can go over that afterwards. So the story is called Strengthened by Grace, and it is on my blog, written in July of 2017. As I walked Angus along the familiar neighborhood tree-lined sidewalk, my mind flitted around as usual, from ideas to memories to plans. All of a sudden, I felt two heavy, cushiony blows on the back of my head. I stopped. I suddenly felt as if I were starring in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I stood still, confused and totally disoriented. I looked behind me. No one. Nothing. I looked up and around. I saw some birthday balloons tied to a mailbox. Although the blows felt soft like a balloon, the balloons weren't the culprit. Perplexed, I stood there determined to figure this out. In curiosity, I retraced my steps and soon heard in a tree the loud fussing of a mockingbird directed at me. I laughed out loud as I began to understand. Apparently, Angus and I had walked a little too close to her nest, and she had dive-bombed me twice on the back of the head to protect her turf. There's a first time for everything. But wait, I could have mindlessly shrugged that off as a coincidence. But I know for sure that at this point in my life, nothing happens by chance. I belong to the Lord who controls all of heaven and earth. Not one speck of dust can move 1 inch without his permission. So, if he controls everything, then he controlled that mockingbird. What was his point in all this, I wondered? Could the Lord be speaking to me through a mockingbird? I reviewed my steps along that stretch of the sidewalk, and nothing significant came to mind. Then it occurred to me that my inner life is always much more significant to him than my outer. So I reviewed my progression of thoughts during that stretch of the walk. What was I thinking right before the blows hit me, I wondered. I remember. I was recalling a conversation my friends at church had the previous week. They commented enthusiastically on how very handsome this man was who we see there every week. As I recounted their excitement, I had agreed with them in my heart, matter-of-factly, that he was very handsome, and in so doing, had entered into their hormonal stirring. Aha! That was my thought the moment before the blows hit me. Realizing that my thought instigated the blows, I laughed out loud. I felt delight in God's creative correction of me in keeping my focus and guarding my heart. I continued walking along, feeling elated that he would care enough for me to speak directly to an indiscreet thought in such a playful and surprising and impactful way. When I got home, I immediately sat down at my computer to search for something more. But I didn't know what. I wanted to go deeper with this, but I had no path to run on. So I just sat there. Moments later, as the sun continued to rise over the back of the neighborhood, a shaft of light beamed into my office over my desk. Suspended in stillness in the light shaft were the usual nondescript tiny specks of dust and lint. In the middle of them, though, a large figurine-like shred of dust took center stage in the shaft of light, and in slow motion it started moving and floating toward me. As it did, it rotated carefully, as if on a display case for me to examine. As I became enthralled with this image, I sensed a distinct uplifting impression. This is for you. As I noticed this brilliant image, I was so surprised because I recognized it as resembling a letter from the Hebrew alphabet. Could the Lord be speaking to me through a piece of dust? I eagerly Googled the Hebrew alphabet, wondering if this could possibly have anything to do with the mockingbird. Bingo! There was the Hebrew letter that resembled the large shred of floating dust. The name of the letter is Lamed, and this is a picture of it. I now had a path to run on, the path of Lamed. The pictograph for the letter Lamed looks like a shepherd's staff or a goad. Lamed is the tallest Hebrew letter and the middle letter or the heart of the Hebrew alphabet. It means to goad, prod, or prick, as a shepherd would do in guiding his sheep. Lamed represents authority and heart knowledge, and its root meaning is to learn or teach. Lamed is not meant to lead us to merely head knowledge, but to spur us on to action in heart and deed. My favorite meaning behind this letter is governing his territory. Could the Lord have used a mockingbird and a piece of dust to bring to my attention my meandering and potentially harmful thoughts? Yes. I know he owns me and my mind. This lesson showed me just how much he owns my mind and how important it is to him. Through this penetrating experience, I felt deeply loved by him, protected by him, and inspired to abandon even more of myself and my mind to his constant care. I have always viewed men through the eyes of a very heterosexual woman. Now that I've been married for nearly 33 years, I don't lust after men anymore, but I have a lingering tendency to make an idol of them because of my history. With all of my healing, I know that the domineering idol of men fell years ago. But maybe in all this, there were a few broken fragments still left lying there on the altar of my heart. And maybe the enemy had an evil plan to lure me to tiptoe toward a particularly handsome one. Who knows? The Lord does, and he took care of it. This bird and dust lesson showed me how much the Lord desires purity in me throughout, and that it's his job to do and complete that sanctifying work in me from head to toe. From the softness of the blows to the allure of the floating Lamed, his grace rules. When I take the time to listen to him and view life through his lens, he speaks to me clearly and always with such grace. I suppose like father, like daughter is his goal. Thank you, Lord, for your attention to me. Your grace always strengthens me. Hebrews 13:9b, it is good for our hearts to be strengthened by grace. So that is the little story that was a true story that really happened to me. And so I hope if something that I mentioned would be helpful or insightful to you, I hope it will be. If you can get a little bit deeper view into him and his ways in your own life and seeing his work in your own life. So I just wanted to go through the steps that the Holy Spirit and my strong intuition together worked to cause this to happen. So I'm going along walking a dog. My third daughter has a dog, and she left it with me for a few weeks when she was out of town. And so I was taking care of him, and I would take him for a walk. So I'm walking along down this tree-lined sidewalk in our neighborhood, and there are two soft blows on the back of my head. It felt like a pillow or a balloon. It was hard, but the blows were hard, but what was banging on my head was soft. I didn't know it was a bird. It felt like a pillow or a balloon. So there were two blows, bam, bam. And so I just stood there and I turned around. I didn't see anything. There was no one. Saw some balloons on the mailbox, but the little ribbons that were holding them on weren't long enough to come over to me and hit me on the head. So I turned around and I retraced my steps. Looking around, didn't see anything, and this mockingbird started fussing at me, looking right at me like she was upset. And I laughed so hard. So I found this mockingbird, and remind me to tell you something about that. The Lord just showed me as I was writing this out. So I was going back and I saw this bird and I said, what is the point? Why would God allow this mockingbird, which he's in total control of, to bang me on the back of the head? What is the point? He doesn't just do things for no reason. He has a very good reason for doing things. Was it something about my behavior? No. Was it something about my thought life? Yes, it was. That has to do with the inner man or inner woman. So I was recalling right before this bird hit me on the back of the head, a conversation that some of my friends were having at church. And I wasn't really in the conversation. I was sitting beside them and I couldn't help but overhear what they were saying. And toward the end, I looked in and I was kind of laughing with them. And they were knowing that I was agreeing with them. And I shook my head. And we were kind of having a hormonal stirring, see? And I was remembering that and laughing at it and thinking of it in a pleasurable way. Okay? So this is how the Lord used creative correction on me, by letting me be hit on the back of the head by a mockingbird 2 times right the moment after I had this thought. In the lesson, he was reminding me to focus on him and to guard my heart, because that is my treasure, is my heart, because that's where Christ lives. So I finish the walk, I come home, I get some water, and I just go right to my computer, and I just feel like there's more to this. I can't just let it go. So I sat there and I just waited. It's probably 2 minutes. I just sat there. I couldn't get up. So I had these shutters right beside my chair where I sit at my desk, and in the morning the sun rises over the back of the neighborhood and the lights stream into my office over my desk, and right after those 2 minutes was up, the sun just peaked and it just poured right into my office right in front of my desk, making this shaft of light like this big right over me, kind of diagonally down to the right. And so you know how when you see sun streaming in through a window, you can look closely and you see these little specks of dust. They're kind of floating in the air. I was just looking at them like all the regular specks of dust that I've seen before, but all of a sudden I noticed in the middle there was a really big one, and it was floating toward me. All the others were kind of still staying in their own little area, but this one was coming toward me, and it was kind of moving around very slowly like it was on display, coming right toward me. Okay, it was very large. And it looked like a letter from the Hebrew alphabet. I just couldn't dismiss that, how much it looked like a letter from the Hebrew alphabet. So it ended up being that, yes, and it ended up being Lamed. It's the 12th letter right in the middle. And if you look at the Hebrew alphabet, all the letters are kind of square and boxy, and they're all in one kind of line. But the Lamed is in the middle, and it goes up higher than all the other letters. So I did end up going on the computer to look at the Hebrew alphabet again to confirm my suspicion and or see if I was going insane. So it confirmed my suspicion, and the Lamed is a picture of a shepherd's staff that guides the sheep. It is the heart of the Hebrew alphabet. It means to goad, to prod, or to prick. Like if one sheep was getting off the path or out of line, he would put his staff on the side and give a little bump there to move her back over on the path. It represents the authority of Christ, the shepherd, and it represents heart knowledge, knowing him by personal experience. And I was looking at all the definitions of Lamed, and my favorite one was governing his territory. And the reason that's my favorite is because he's telling me that I am his territory. He was governing and caring for his territory. That's telling me that I am his territory. And it's also telling me that he is the boss over me, which I love, and that he's protecting me and that he's in control. So that made me very happy. So that's my favorite definition and meaning. And I wanted to just mention some feelings and experiences I had during this creative correction. I laughed out loud. I felt great joy in my heart. I felt deeply loved. I felt protected. I was encouraged in the process of purification, and I desired more closeness with him because of the way he treated me, because he is gentle with me, because the shepherd is gentle and humble, and he corrects you gently and softly and lovingly. Now, if I had been willful and said no and turned away, maybe things would have gone up a notch. It would have escalated or gotten a little bit more harsh. But that didn't happen, because slowly over time in my relationship with the Lord, with the way he treats me, he has melted my heart. He has never been harsh with me, although I've responded to him in extreme harshness in the beginning. And I would not trust him. I would not go toward him. And now I do it of my own volition because of his faithfulness, because of his gentleness, over and over and over and over and over again in a personal one-on-one relationship for over 30 years. So you really get to know someone really well when you're walking in that yoke for a long time and you're looking to see what he's doing. You want to see what he's doing in your life. You're not just clueless thinking about the news or, watching some sitcom. You're thinking about what he's showing you. And I love this too, because being raised as a performer, it's easy to fall back into the mentality that I have to complete my sanctification. But I don't do that so much anymore. I did much more in the past, but this also was a confirmation to me, and I already knew it in my head, but it was a confirmation in my heart that his job is to sanctify me. It is not my job to sanctify myself. I can cooperate with him. I can listen and follow him. I can walk in the yoke with him, but sanctification is not my job. That is his job. And I just loved how extremely graceful his correction was of me. And as I was writing this on the board, he reminded me that it was in particular a mocking bird that he used to correct me. Do you know Galatians 6:7? It says God will not be mocked, right? It says God will not be mocked. So guess who will be mocked? When we are thinking outside of our boundaries or speaking outside of our boundaries or acting outside of our boundaries, we are going to be mocked. And I was being mocked by a mockingbird in God's correction of me. So I just thought that was really cool. It was a wonderful correction. Of all the corrections I've had as a child, none of them were as effective as this at all. There's no comparison. And none of them were as graceful as this. This is pure grace. This is dynamic grace, deep in the heart, working The Holy Spirit and the dynamic grace of God working deep in my heart to change my heart, to put me on a better path, to remind me, yes, no, what to do, what not to do, where to go, how to walk, how to think, how to be the new nature. That's what all the lessons are about. Confirming to me that I'm the new nature. I'm not who I used to be. That's what happened when I was born again, out of the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light, which was a miracle. So when you're born again, you were born again as the new nature, and that's all, nothing else. There are wounds in us that need healing, but we are the new nature in Jesus Christ. So I hope that is helpful or interesting or insightful in some way for you. We are always strengthened by grace. And let's read that verse in Hebrews one more time. Hebrews 13:9b. It is good for our hearts to be strengthened by grace. So as you walk in the yoke with the Lord, and as you listen and follow Him, you will have similar, in some way, experiences to this in your own unique life. And you will be strengthened by grace because Jesus Christ is the grace of God. He is gentle and humble, and that is how He corrects His sheep, the ones who are listening and following, the ones who want to obey. If one of you is in a season of rebellion or you're being triggered, the correction may be a little more up a notch, okay? But I don't know where you are, but the more you listen and the more you're paying attention to Him and the more in agreement you are with Him, the more gentle He can be. And especially the more that you're paying attention. All right, so I hope this was helpful. I pray God's blessing on all of you. You guys like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time.